Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands. I'm Sudeep.
And I'm Sharan.
So today we have a topic that has been, that has attracted a lot of interest. Our beloved topic of offline distribution in the FMCG sector.
Right. And this is especially for the D2C FMCG founders, but actually it's for all kind of founders who are looking to understand the general trade distribution. It's for them.
Okay. So let's quickly first summarize, Sharan. Why do D2C or digital first brands, why do they need offline distribution?
Well, like we've said so many times on the show already, D2C in FMCG is not a business model at all. When selling online, you can cater to a certain set of audience, and they are largely your innovators and the early adopters at best. You need to get access to other customers, and that is why you need to go offline first.
Yeah, it is more of a stage rather than a business model. And in one of our episodes on why brands advertised, we spoke about the distribution curve, right? How the customers are spread out. So there are innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards.
So this just from how you're saying it, right? We know where the majority is.
Correct.
The early adopters and the innovators make up, as per the rule of this distribution curve, about 15% of the entire consumer base. If you take the Indian context into account, the entire online shopping universe of households is about 19%, and that is skewed by the metro cities also. I think metro cities are about 37%, and that's the skew.
And I think added point there is that it is all about omni-channel consumption and purchase today. So you will advertise digitally, people will consume it there, they will retain the salience in their heads, and when they go to purchase offline a lot of their stuff, they will possibly ask for your product, and vice versa. So therefore, the journeys are no longer only uni-channel; they are omni-channel now, and hence possibly you need, digital marketing as well as digital availability, offline marketing as well as offline availability.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get to the specific topic of this episode. Why is offline distribution, considered a very feared aspect amongst the entrepreneurs?
See, I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I understand most of the fear and the apprehension of offline distribution comes from a lack of understanding and a lack of experience dealing with distributors, with retailers, with wholesalers. It just seems extremely intimidating for the number of people you got to convince and interact with.
And maybe it is also about how many people you are interacting with. So supplying directly to retailer warehouses possibly seems far easier than building a supply chain to cater to lakhs of retail stores.
See, the point that lot of people miss is that offline is actually the most profitable channel for an FMCG business.
Okay,
And if
interesting.
you don't do that, you are
Uh-huh.
actually giving up your profitability.
Okay, just on that profitability bit, how is it the most profitable part of the business?
See, it's about your negotiation power, right? That's where everything comes from. Your margins, your profitability, how much you make on each sale comes from the negotiations you do. The modern trade guys, they are not dependent on your business, and they've got a plethora of stores and customers walking into their stores or coming to their platforms. So they have the negotiation power. When they know, say, 20-30% of your business depends on them, they will call the shots, and they can actually bully you into giving up higher margins. And I see this with pretty much every entrepreneur I've spoken to in the startup world, that they want to get listed, but they end up giving 30-40% margins to these modern trade platforms or the e-com platforms. But look at this in offline trade. A retailer independently will not contribute too much to your business. His ability to bully you into higher margins is very limited. So you can control your margins and use it to incentivize the customers who picking up your products, and you could do so much even within the store to get the incentive at the retailer to sell your product without compromising your margins. That's where the profits can come from.
Okay, like we said that it is about a stage. So therefore, when you are early, there's not much demand, etc., you use the e-commerce setups for visibility and possibly inducing trials. I remember a lot of D2C founders writing about this, that when you are able to create your own demand, even your ROAS on your online channels becomes very good. And similarly,
Exactly.
once you start creating that demand, your offline channel will become significantly powerful and profitable also.
It is about you leveraging the retailer's traffic versus you actually bringing in traffic to the retailer in any platform, and that's the power equation.
Okay, excellent. But let's get to the scarier part, which is this initial setup. How to go about this initial setup?
The intimidating factor here is that you got to invest in setting up the team, you got to pay their salaries, and unlike in modern trade or e-commerce, there is no initial stock up PO that you're getting. So because you don't get that initial PO, you feel like you're not getting a return for the investment. But you've got to stretch this because the distributor is not giving you an initial PO. He's going to take your product and distribute. It's going to be slow. You may or may not give him credit. But when a distributor builds your distribution, reaches your products into certain stores, that is when you actually start you're cutting through to the customers in the offline trade. Now, this is a slow burn, but it's not a very slow burn. It's at best about a quarter. And that's when you start seeing returns on the investment you made in the sales teams. And it's not something that's to be feared. It is only the problem of immediate benefit versus a slightly longer term benefit.
Okay. Now within this, let's get to the first part of, really mounting this entire setup, which is about appointing your first distributor. Now, how should our listeners approach this?
This is something that you spoke about, measuring what you treasure. Just doing your research personally by walking up to the retailers, going to where the shoppers are. It's the same here. You got to go to your nearest stores where your category is being stocked. Look at what other products are there, what's the size of the category, and then talk to the retailer and find out who is distributing your competition brands into these stores. And also ask them what other brands the same distributor is selling into these stores. And you want to find a distributor that aligns with your product and category, and this is the best way of going about it.
Wouldn't there be a conflict if you go to the same set of distributors who are distributing the same category?
Maybe there are some companies that look at it as conflict, but logically speaking, there are really no trade secrets lying there with a distributor. At best, you will know what schemes are being run, but the moment you go to wholesale or retail, even that is public news. So technically, there is no real conflict of interest or trade secrets being passed on. However, there are companies that insist on not having competition brands being distributed by the same distributor. But a lot of the distributors have a workaround that they have sister concerns taking up competition brands. So the reason I'm saying we should go to the same distributor again is that the best thing that you can get from them is that they will have a list of stores that your category is being sold in already. You don't have to go through that learning curve. Take that list of stores and you can start trying to reach into those stores from day one. And these distributors also have an ongoing relationship with those retailers that your category is working in. So you don't wait for a distributor to build this relationship for you. You have a ready set of stores and existing relationship to bank on. That is the magic of going with a existing distributor or a competition distributor.
Fair. And the distributor would also know the category nuances, the typical cycle time, expiries, return rate, etc., etc. So that is also an advantage.
Yeah, and he will also know the retailers who don't pay
Yeah,
out, so you don't have to get stuck with them.
correct. Okay, excellent. Good. Now, from a filters that you would use to appoint a distributor, does scale matter? Scale or size of the distributor matter?
This is a brilliant question, and the answer is yes and no. Because ideally, you want the largest distributor, but the largest distributors might not be the most amiable to you because, as a new brand, your contribution to the distributor's business will be very low. So you might not get a great share of mind of the distributor. You might be among the also rents. You also cannot go to the smallest or the young, new and upcoming distributor who's just starting his business because you don't want to share the same learning curve. You'd rather go with a distributor who's been in the market for a little longer. So the ideal size would be the mid-sized distributors who are not the biggest in the city or biggest in the area, but nothing like having the larger distributor if you can get a share of mine.
And how do you get share of mind? Do you give them more margin?
And that is the biggest question, right? Now, distributors want margin, and you are such a small brand. You, even if you give the 50% margin on absolute terms, you'd be very small a contribution to the entire distributor business. So the way a lot of businesses build is that they give higher margins, and that's the worst way to go about it, because very rarely will you be able to cut back on your margins. So you need to give them industry standard margins or slightly more, but do not give too high a margin. But you still have to validate your share of mind. So you've got to give the distributor greater incentives, take up some of the costs like the salesman's salary, the delivery van. You take on the merchandising capability, giving them more promoters for the stores the distributor is distributing into. So there are different ways you can incentivize the distributor and also lessen the load of the distributor so that the margin seems bigger than it actually is. And with time, you can always take away these add-ons that you're providing to the distributor. And this is not like you're cheating the distributor. At a certain volume, you start justifying the return. And in absolute terms, the money the distributor makes from your business will start justifying the effort the distributor is putting into it. At that time, you can remove the incentives, but you cannot touch the margin. So therefore, you're buffering yourself for the long term.
Or you can incentivize them for chasing a different set of matrices that become relevant to your business at that stage. What you're suggesting is a balanced approach between investment and the sort of return, potential return that you want from them. This is appointing somebody who is there in the market who can give you access to the stores. How about appointing your own sales team?
The role of the sales team is, I mean, believe it or not, it's not sales, it's to ensure distribution and to make sure that your product is primed to sell at the point of sale. So you will train the salesman, your sales officers at best, to make sure that the products are distributed right. And then once a product is distributed in the stores, you also have to ensure that the product is going out of the stores. So are you merchandising them right? Are they placed in the right kind of stores? Are they placed in the right place in the stores? Are they communicating to the retailers what the unique selling points of your brand is? Why people should choose your brand? Because people do ask retailers for recommendations. So you need to educate the retailers. You got to educate even the retailer salesman on why your product is better, and make sure this communication of why your brand is better and why it has a right to win has to be consistent right from the beginning, as in from the distributor right up to the retailer and the retailer salesman. That's the extent to which the communication has to be consistent. And this is the job of your sales team.
Okay, so not only are they representing your brand, but they're training the market as to how to represent your brand in front of the customer.
Absolutely. Like I said, the distributor ensures product availability, but it is the job of your sales team to make sure the product goes off the shelf.
So, like we said in the past, you start with one area, one distributor. As your ambitions grow, you want
Yes.
to move to cover the entire city, then the state, then the region, then nation, etc. How do you scale that up?
It is a gradual process, but it's geometric progress, because you start with one area. You don't start with just another area once you're comfortable with one area. You start a couple more areas. Ideally, by the end of the first quarter, I tell a lot of the entrepreneurs, make sure you're covering the city. And once you've done the city, then you don't do another city. You start covering the state. Then you start doing parallel expansion. And that's how business is built, right? You can't wait to go sequential. Once you've learned how the little bits work, then you start compounding the entire effort. And as you keep getting footholds, you've got to keep driving up your distribution. And that's the only way you will scale. There's no real rocket science behind it. But there's one point I'd make is that every region you expand into could have very different challenges, but they'll also present different opportunities. You've got to be a little flexible in saying what's worked in one part of your first city might not be same, sometimes even within the same city, or the next city would have different challenges, and you just got to be aware that these things are going to happen, and you've got to be able to adapt as you go.
So that's it, folks. Thanks for joining conversation on business of brands. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them to us on our LinkedIn page or on our website. We'll be very happy to respond to you.